Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. MBA Careers is an MBA worth the investment. My name is Nelly, and I'll be the moderator on behalf of me and my prep team. Our speaker today is Jenifer Turtschanow, CEO of Aringo. Aringo is a consultancy firm helping thousands of students all over the world with their MBA applications. So if you're wondering, will an MBA degree help you advance your career? How much do MBA graduates earn? Where do alumni find work? Then this is the webinar for you. Before starting, I just want to let you know that you can ask questions anytime during the webinar using the Q&A box, and we will take time to answer at the end of the session. All questions are welcome, so don't hesitate. I think we're all set now, so I'm giving the floor to you, Jen.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your help with getting everything coordinated for today. So we're very excited to speak with you. Again, Aringo is an MBA consulting firm. We've helped many candidates across the globe with their MBA. So I'm excited to talk about, is an MBA worth the investment for you? So again, my name is Jenifer Turtschanow. I'm the CEO of Aringo. So we'll get started with obviously you can see now that I'm with Aringo, but we've helped over 4,000 people get their MBA. And so we do have quite the track record in helping our candidates. So we'll kick things off today with talking about how Aringo can help you with your MBA. So we do offer a lot of different tools and services. So a couple of things. If you just go to our website, aringo.com, we do have a chances estimation calculator on our website, and that's an easy way for you to kind of put in a little bit of your demographic background, your work information, your experience, and be able to see a rough estimate of, whether certain classes of schools, top MBAs are a good fit for you and your profile. Now, know that that's a calculation. And so we'd love the chance to talk to you a bit more about your profile and see what you have to offer these programs and how you could be a good fit for them, just beyond the statistics side of things. We also help with school selection. We help with the whole process of planning out your MBA applications. It can be a bit arduous, being able to manage multiple deadlines for schools, as well as maybe doing some tasks that you're not used to as far as writing essays, and being able to pitch yourself in a humble way, but yet in a great way of showing the school exactly what they're looking for. We'll also help you with your strategy. We'll make sure that we overhaul your CV and put it into an MBA format that's easy for MBA admissions committees to scan, in that whole 5 seconds everybody says that they take to look at your resume. Then we'll work on your essay writing skills. We actually have quite a bit of help in this area, including writers on our team that will help you with refining your voice to make sure that it's fitting these schools. We'll help with letters of recommendation. You'll get multiple interview preps. We also have scholarship, essay help, as well as negotiations, and so much more. So even help with master's applications as well. So not just MBAs. So that's a bit more about Aringo. As I said earlier, we've helped about 4,000 people get admitted to top MBA programs. Here's a snapshot of some of our stats for the top MBA programs across the globe. And if you can kind of picture this, there's a lot more detail on our website as well when you go to our results page, and you can kind of break this down and also kind of look at the top 15, top 20, including also the European programs, and year over year, knowing that last year was a bit different from the past years of admission, post-pandemic or during the pandemic. So a lot of information to kind of see there, but as you can see, we have strong results at all the top MBA programs because we know these schools and what they're looking for. And we'll dive into that a bit today and hopefully help you with deciding if an MBA is worth it for you. So here is a sampling of MBA employers. And so these are top employers across the globe that are looking for MBA graduates. I'm assuming that some of you may want to work for one of these companies, but it's a wide gamut. So they're looking for, there's consulting firms that are looking for folks to help with the consulting side, product management, technology, fintech, all sorts of different programs, or I'm sorry, employers that are looking for candidates just like you that have specialized backgrounds, plus an MBA to really kind of help move their company into the next level. And so here's just a quick sample of who you could be working for, either long-term or even during your internship. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Why should you get an MBA and why in the top 10? We'll go over that, and then also kind of cover who the top 10 MBAs are in the US as well as globally. Then we'll talk about rankings and what goes into that. And then we'll help you with choosing where you should apply, and kind of helping you again with your chances and thinking about how do you put together a strategy for applying to schools. And then we'll go through the MBA application process. Again, a lot of the times it's on every single school's website, but do you know what that really entails? So we'll break that down. We'll talk about MBA cost, because there is a bit of balance there, making sure that you have an ROI post-MBA. And then we'll talk about the companies, salaries, and then again, that return on investment. So we'll go ahead and get started talking about MBA programs. So the main motivations for people for getting an MBA is typically because they're either wanting to switch sectors or function. Most of the time, somebody has spent 3 to 4 years working within a certain sector or a certain function and says, okay, so I've mastered this, I'm ready for the next level. So in a traditional sense, instead of going forward with the current company and taking years to get to that next step, going through analyst 1, analyst 2, and then maybe managing a project, you can go to your MBA and then come back and be able to switch into either a consultant role or even kind of jump up into the management side instead of staying again on the kind of technical side. And so that would also be kind of similar for accelerators. So folks that are looking to really do a hyper jump from one career level to the next, even within the same. One area that this is really particular is going to be product management, fintech. These folks would really get this opportunity to make this big jump, whether that's at a similar company, but usually at a bigger company, depending on what they're exactly looking for. But you're looking to move from an analyst level to be able to be a project manager or a product manager, but not just at a local firm, but then moving to maybe a tech company like Google or Amazon. And then the other people that are making up this gamma of folks that are applying for MBAs is going to be future entrepreneurs. So folks that have maybe had a taste of entrepreneurship, but maybe it didn't work out as well, or maybe you learned that you didn't know enough to be successful in that area, or you've been working for a company and you've decided that it's time for you to be able to own something of your own, and you want to make that leap. And so folks will do this, get the MBA to grow their network, as well as kind of set up a home base for where they're going to be growing their business. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about location, but that's kind of why entrepreneurs are kind of joining MBA programs. The other thing that people may think that they want to do with an MBA is to go into academia. I'll tell you that an MBA is not for that. So many top MBA programs do offer a PhD program, but you're really not going to go into an MBA to get the academic experience, because there are some theories taught, obviously, but it's much more about practical experience and being able to apply that to the current situation in the future, not necessarily diving into algorithms and such. So you'll, if you want to go the academic route, I would highly recommend looking into PhD programs at the top MBA or top business schools. All right, so top 10 MBA. Why think about top 10 versus any MBA program? So some of the main reasons are going to be that starting salary when you graduate. So if you're wanting to earn 6 figures, this is how to do it. And this will actually help you with that career boost as well. So we already talked about this, but you could want to switch careers. And this will give you that opportunity to make that shift. Employers are going to be heavily recruiting MBA candidates from top 10 MBAs. I'll say that also extends down to top 15 too. So I know that we're focusing on top 10, but I think there's a bit of a trickle down between, top 10 and top 15 MBAs as well. The other thing is that maybe you want to use your MBA to get international experience. Aringo, as a global company or a global consulting firm, we work with candidates from all over the globe, and some of them have never been to another country. And this is an opportunity to have that experience, as well as really broaden the experience you have with working with people across different cultures, and be able to take that to the next level so that you could work for a much larger global company and share that experience of working on a project or anything else that could be related to the MBA. So it'll open the doors to you also working abroad. So it kind of works both ways. So again, we'll kind of hit on this when we talk about location, but when it comes to working abroad, an MBA is certainly a way to get there. And then the best thing about an MBA program is that you're going to build this strong network of peers, folks that are going to be your friends for life. I know that many of these cohorts still maintain their WhatsApp group because you're going through something that's quite unique. You're kind of back in college or undergrad, you're experiencing a new culture, you're open to doing new things. Maybe, you've never experienced the finance side of things, but you're interested in it. And so you're kind of dipping the toes in the water, but you make good friends who have been in that business for a really long time that maybe would want to, help you later on in life and be a business partner. So it's certainly an amazing experience. There's also case competitions and events that happen across the globe for you to meet other MBA candidates going through the same thing right now, and actually also show some school pride by having, winning or competing in case competitions, again, across the globe, whether it's like a consulting or case study, or if it's a net impact case study. There's so many fun things for you to do. So where can you find top MBA rankings? So there's a lot of information out there to help you kind of decide which MBA is the right for you. These organizations all try to kind of help you get a broad picture of each one of these MBAs and what's important to them, how much they cost, how much, what ROI is typical of candidates. So this also starts forming what MBA programs are also looking for. So when we look at this list, most of these ranking firms are going to be looking at your readiness for the program, so your academic readiness. So that's where the GMAT GRE score comes in. I wouldn't worry a lot about that right now. Again, that's where Aringo really excels, is if you're below that GMAT score. But it's one piece of data that they're going to use to see where you're at on the academic level. And so they'll also look at your transcripts from your undergrad or any other education that you've had, including certification. So if you have a CFA, you're a chartered accountant, they're going to also look at those data points to be able to understand that you're academically ready for this experience. Another thing they're going to look at is your career experience. So, have you excelled enough in your career to be ready for an MBA and be able to contribute in the classroom discussions in your specific area? So most of the time when we talk about top MBAs, they're going to be looking for 3 years of work experience at the time that you start your application. So this is going to be kind of what they're going to show you in these rankings is, what employers their candidates are coming from, and then what employers they're going to. The other things that they're going to be looking at is your how you've experienced your social experience. So have you been super involved, and what the student life is like? And so there's a bit of a survey that they do, and it's going to be asking these candidates, how did they enjoy their time while they were at school, and then as an alumni. So those are a couple of factors that will go into these rankings, as well as the academic rigor of the program itself. So for Aringo, we typically focused on US news as well as the Forbes rankings when we look at things. And so these are the top MBA programs that you're going to see from the US. Many people have a lot of different names or nicknames for things. So there's like the M7 or the U10 or top 10, T10, T15. So a lot of different names, but these are your top programs that everybody's going to be looking at. Typically within the first or the top 5 programs, you're going to usually see Stanford, Harvard, and Wharton. Booth floats between 3rd, 4th, and 1st. And then you have MIT, Kellogg, and then we'll also kind of round out things with Columbia as well as Berkeley. So here are those top MBA programs in the US. And then moving over to Europe, UK as well. So you're going to see that the European school names are a little bit different. So like if you asked my mom, she would know about Harvard, but I'm going to guarantee you she's never heard of INSEAD. So European UK schools are more specialized because they're really just business schools. So, whereas Harvard is good at everything academically, INSEAD is really good at business school, and that's what they do. You're not going to have somebody study, geology at INSEAD. So, that's the kind of a bit of a difference, is that they might not be well known when you talk about like a household brand name, but they're very well known in the business world. And so if you were to say that you graduated from INSEAD, your employers, your bosses are going to really understand that that was a really rigorous MBA program and one of the top ones. So LBS, HEC Paris, Cambridge, Oxford. Then we'll also kind of round things out in Spain with IESE, ESADE. IMD is also a really fantastic program that keeps popping up in #1 in a couple of different rankings, and it's a fantastic school. And then we also have IE. So then let's talk about, should you attend a US or European program? So again, US schools have a bit more of a brand just because they're good at everything. You're going to find a lot more Americans in those programs just because it's super easy to be able to move and pivot in careers. And many Americans are going to look to stay within North America to help boost their career as well as their earnings. So those MBAs are typically going to be 2 years with an internship. Then we look at European. Again, they're a bit smaller and really focus on business schools. So the brand name is a little bit lower when we talk about a household brand name, not like it's very big whenever we talk about the brand name within the business community. So you're going to have a much more international experience if you attend a European UK school. And they usually tend to be quicker, usually 1 to 1.5 years. And so a lot of people are really excited about that because you can jump back in the workforce and you only have 1 year out of school, which includes not only tuition, but the cost of staying or living there, as well as the opportunity cost of being unemployed for a year. So a lot of people really enjoy that part of the program. But some of the European programs do have the opportunity to extend it. The biggest one of those is going to be LBS, with the opportunity to have 16, 18, or 21 units, and so or months, and so you could build in 1 or 2 internships into that experience. So what it comes down to usually when candidates are asking us, should I apply to a US school, European school, or both, or what should I do? The biggest question that we have to ask is, where do you want to work when you graduate? Because that's really the biggest thing, is building that network. If you want to be in Europe or if you want to be abroad, then you really want to make sure that you are in that continent, really, to be able to make the most of it. If you're going to be working for an international company, then, maybe it's okay that you study in Europe, but then end up in Asia, those types of things. But, that's one of the biggest things that you'll want to see is, or consider is, where do you want to work? Where are the companies that you want to work? What types of jobs are going to be there? And what's going to help you with your future beyond the MBA? So another thing that we like to talk about is forgetting the myths. So which school pays the most? Everybody always says Harvard, but MIT actually outdid Harvard and had just a little bit above what HBS's students were earning out of school. So the highest ranked MBA programs in Europe. So LBS is kind of the top of what we're usually. But then also when we talk about Europe, UK, we have INSEAD, LBS, HEC Paris, and then it goes down to Oxford and Cambridge. And so those are the schools that you'll be looking for in Europe. Okay, so where did you get your internship? So when we talk about this, we want to think about, not only, I think like pay is important, but really is it with a company is going to help you with your next steps. So again, this is kind of demystifying, the top MBA programs always get the most money. And so you can see that Wharton, Booth, and Kellogg, as well as Columbia and Sloan, had a higher median internship salary than HBS and Stanford, and then NYU broke all of those molds and made more. So you don't have to be in the M7 to make the highest amount of money. That's where you should be focusing on which school is the best for you, and it won't be, not every school is the best fit just because they make the most amount of money. Okay, so how to choose a school. We already kind of talked about this, but location is going to be one of the biggest things that you'll want to figure out, where you want to live, and that experience you're going to have during the MBA program. So if we were to kind of look at a couple of different programs, if we look at MIT or Harvard, they're going to be in Boston, which is, a big city that's going to offer a lot of different options. You're going to do a lot of walking to and from classes. But if we looked at a school like Ross or Darden or Cornell, those schools are a bit more remote. And they're located in college towns. So again, probably still walkable as far as your day-to-day, but if you wanted to go to the grocery store, things like that, you'd have to kind of coordinate to have some transportation. Yet the fun part about it is that you're in a college town, and you get to really experience a bit of that town itself without the distraction of, the big city of New York or Boston, and really kind of concentrate on being with your cohort and being concentrated in one area versus everybody scattered out across a very large city in different boroughs. So another thing, obviously, is going to be rankings. This should play into your decision, obviously. But a couple of things is that what resonates here in the US or in Europe or in Asia might not resonate somewhere else. So while Darden is a prominent name here in the US, it might not carry weight back in India. So, a lot of candidates are wanting to make sure that different programs do carry that weight when they're returning home. Maybe not necessarily right after post-MBA, but the long term if they decide that they do want to move back after a couple of years abroad. So school specialties is another thing that you should really be thinking about. Each school kind of has its own personality. And so, obviously everybody thinks about engineering when you think about MIT. You're thinking about leadership when you're talking about Harvard. You're talking about finance with Wharton. You're talking about social impact with Stanford. And so if there's a school that's known for what you want to do, that's certainly going to help influence your decision as to, what's the best choice for you, not only from a branding standpoint, but also the opportunities that are going to be available to you from the different employers, and then also the different social experiences that you'll have during the program. And again, that'll kind of influence who's going to recruit there. So you'll want to look at those companies that you're looking to work for and find out if they're recruiting at those campuses. And you can look at any school's employment report. Typically, if you just Google or search for the school name like HBS employment report or Darden employment report, you should be able to pull up statistics from the past year and find out where they were recruited for, or what the top recruiters were, the pay that they received, and internships. There's a lot of data that you can look into to make sure it's the best fit for you. And if it's a good fit, that data is going to help you during your application and your interviews. And so the other thing would be any specific courses of studies. So like one thing that's really great about Stanford and Yale and a couple other schools, MIT, I think, is that they let you study across the campus. So let's say you have this really cool idea about how dance can, or the arts influences business, and you're wanting to come up with your own venture in this. You could study the arts at Stanford or take a specific class of like business and arts or whatever it might be across the campus or across the street from the business school and get that unique experience in your curriculum. The other thing is like Booth, they let you tailor essentially almost all of your curriculum. So, you want to find out which schools have the curriculum that you're most interested in. So where will you best be served by your career aspirations? Again, where are you going to be the best fit? What's the school's culture? Teaching methods is a really big one. So obviously, most people talk about HBS being the case method, but a lot of other schools have their own methods and ways of helping you with hands-on teaching. And so, really study what their pedagogy or their academic learning and theories are so that you can really determine what is the best scenario for you. Class size is another great one to consider. So when we look at Berkeley and Yale and a couple other schools, they actually have quite a small class. And so, we might say like, technically your odds are better of admission at a certain school. However, because of the smaller class size, it becomes more competitive than maybe a school ranked above it. So it's, thinking about that as well, thinking about the experience you're wanting to have when you're in the MBA program will be important. And then the school's approach to the students. So a really great example of this is many of the US programs are going to have a ton of student clubs and organizations, right? Like you're going to be able to go and be on a soccer team for the MBA team or for the MBA cohort. You're going to have your own student government. You're going to have the finance club. You're going to have all these different clubs that are going to be important to you and what you're doing. But then if we look at INSEAD, yes, they have student clubs, but it's a one-year rigorous program. So they're not so focused on how you're going to, incorporate yourself into those student organizations. They're much more oriented towards how are you going to do under a high level of stress and be able to manage the program and recruitment at the same time, and maybe do a couple of things that are interesting for you or interesting to you, but not necessarily that you're going to join 10 clubs. They're more focused on the academics and the rigor and you getting through the one-year program. So thinking about what kind of experience you're looking for will help you with determining which school is a good best fit for you. So what you'll need to do for applying, there's quite a few steps to this. As far as full-time MBA programs, most of the schools are going to make you register and have a registration fee. They're going to look for your transcripts. Most of them at this point are allowing you to upload copies during the process. Again, double check what they're looking for. Some schools do require the TOEFL or IELTS if you're an international student who hasn't studied completely in English, and even with that, sometimes, like in Africa and India, like sometimes those programs don't exactly count and they still require an English exam. And then they're going to want to have a CV, but this is a different kind of CV. It's one that's formatted for MBA admissions committees. And so in this resume, they're looking for your accomplishments, not your responsibilities. They're also looking for more about who you are. So unlike the typical, job application CV, you're going to want to have one that's created and tailored towards the MBA experience, and maybe showing your social experiences during college might be relevant for the MBA program, where it wouldn't be for an employer. And then MBA applications can range from having 1 to 7 essays. So Harvard having that one, and then INSEAD has 7, actually 9 this year, like including the short essays. So quite a range there, but being ready to tackle those essays and share different parts of who you are in each one of them to really highlight who you are. Then they'll require recommendation letters. And then of course the GMAT, GRE, executive assessment, or some sort of entrance exam, most commonly the GMAT or GRE. A quick word on that is that the GMAT and GRE are both widely accepted, especially in the US. Between the schools, there's no big difference between the two of them. They're just mostly concerned about which one you do the best in. So what does an MBA cost and how do you pay for it? So when we look at the US schools, the tuition could range, between $130,000 and $140,000 for these top schools. And then we're looking at 80 to 100K in euros for the European schools. Obviously, it's a little bit less with the European schools because they're 1 year as far as that investment goes. And so many students are looking at loans. Very few people have saved up enough money to pay the entire cost of tuition plus the living expenses. So don't feel left out of, or worried. Lots of people, almost your entire cohort will be in the same situation of trying to figure out how to pay for the MBA experience. So most folks are using loans. And then there are scholarships. So for the most part, when you receive a letter of admission, these MBA programs are going to typically give you also your scholarship decision at the same time, unless it's otherwise noted. A few schools will ask you to fill out an independent scholarship form, but not all of them. So where do MBA students kind of end up working? So one of the number one places that people will go is consulting. That's usually one of the number one things that our clients will say initially is that I want to go into consulting. I want to work for an MBB. And so that is a big chunk of the pie. But students also end up going into finance, tech. They go into industry, maybe working at a different, a top name brand or a multinational brand. And then there are a few people that will go into entrepreneurship as well. And so you can kind of see this. And it says within entrepreneurship that folks are looking to go into that, 2 to 3 years after they graduate. So it might take a little bit of time. They might decide to get some experience in a similar company or a very large company before moving into their own venture. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so if you're wanting to be a strategy consultant, the consultants usually kind of are looking at different companies and going in and looking at problems that are happening and how they can help the company work on facing those issues. It could be, and here is where your expertise from the business education or foundational business classes are going to help: sales, supply chain, marketing, or product. And when we talk about your career goals and moving into consulting, if you have experience in one of these areas, you may want to tweak your short-term, long-term goals to say, I want to work in strategy consultant, leveraging my experience in supply chain, working at Lockheed Martin. So this is something that gives a much more specific picture to that committee so that they could see, yeah, this is a viable option for him or her to move into a consulting role. Another thing that they could be working on, another main thing that another place where a lot of MBA grads end up is in marketing. So you'll oversee the marketing business, and that could be a marketing strategy across the board or for a specific product. And so marketing is a big one. Financial manager. So these are kind of the different steps. A lot of the times when we talk to candidates, they're looking for finance, investment banking, private equity. So each one of those, every time you go up that ladder, it really does get harder to get into there. So, maybe if you're pivoting from product to finance, you maybe not say that you immediately want to go into private equity. Maybe we talk about moving into finance and then being able to move up the ladder into investment banking or private equity. But these are a couple of really great opportunities. Again, leveraging the experience you have maybe within a market or the product experience that you have and how that relates or is transferable as far as your skills go to the finance world and working with clients. Another way that MBA candidates are employed is through operations and supply chain. So this is a really big world that you might not have thought about prior to an MBA, but it's fantastic. You're going to get this solid leadership experience during your MBA, and you can see that these are direct transferable skills and an exciting opportunity, especially post-pandemic, how every business has changed, every different economy has been evolving. How do we purchase products? How do we get them to different places? And so it's a big field for MBA candidates as well. So who's going to be recruiting during the MBA program? So consulting firms, we obviously know about the MBBs, but then there's also going to be like Deloitte. Deloitte will also be recruiting not only for financial institutions, but they also consult for, or they also are looking for consulting firms. So, don't limit yourself just to the top 3 MBA consulting firms, but kind of look outside that list and find which one is the best for you and your experience. So we'll talk about financial institutions. So obviously these are some really big names: JP Morgan, Bank of America, Deloitte, Goldman Sachs, really some big names there. Then the tech giants. So again, most of the time when I talk to candidates, their initial goal is to be employed by these big tech companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, or Apple. But then we also have Intel and HP, a lot of really big folks in the tech industry, and especially fintech, are going to be recruiting for MBA candidates as well. And then if we move into FMCG, we obviously have AB InBev, PepsiCo, Procter & Gamble, Unilever. Those are some great name brands to be working for, and being able to see those recruiters on campus every couple of weeks during the recruitment cycle. Okay, so where do they work? So there's some startups, right? So some candidates are going to move into the startup world, Airbnb, Uber, early stage companies that are maybe going through VC and PE. But there's a ton of other sectors that you could also go into. Energy, healthcare, those are 2 really big sectors right now. So obviously we have a lot of folks that are moving from oil and gas to energy and sustainability. Healthcare is huge. I mean, obviously it was huge before the pandemic, but even now, talking about healthcare systems and revamping is really big. The hospitality sector is really seeing some transitions and how they operate and how they offer different products during different times now. So there's a lot of other opportunities for you to explore during an MBA. You don't have to go into product management or into finance. You can certainly explore these options as well. There are plenty of recruiters that are going to be on campus looking for candidates to fill these top positions every year. So now we'll talk about our average salaries. So you can obviously read this chart, but looking at the difference between year 1 and year 3, obviously in the top 10, you're going to start to see the difference of what you're going to be making versus how fast your salary is going to grow from the different schools. All right. So now when we talk about the European schools, you can also see the salary post 3 years. This really has to do with their reporting and how their rankings work. So the reporting for first year out isn't as easily accessible. So you'll want to kind of see if you can find that during their employment report. But this is, a good idea of what you're going to be making 3 years out from some European schools. All right, so now this is where we really need to kind of figure out why top 10 MBA, why I'm going to invest my time, not only in the actual MBA, but also this process. It's grueling, writing all these applications, getting your hopes up and getting excited. It's thrilling. And then also just, it's a lot of work. So why should I do all this? So you can go onto our website. You can see the ROI calculator link here and go on and kind of see what the ROI would be for you. So we have an example below. If you were to graduate from Stanford, go into general management and live in New York, you'll essentially gain back the cost of your MBA, total cost of that MBA in about 2 years. So I highly encourage you to go online and check this out and, play with the different schools to see where you're at and, what it would take, especially if you're an international student and trying to, convert the different currencies. This is a good way for you to understand, okay, so I need to secure a spot in the US or in Europe for X amount of years before I can pay this off in return and start my own business in my country or my home country or wherever you're from. So, kind of keeping this in mind. Okay, so that was everything I had to share about the MBA, why MBA and what it's going to gain for you. So my contact information is here. Again, my name is Jenifer Turtschanow. My email address is there. And now we will open things up for questions.
Thank you very much, Jen. We heard a lot of interesting information. Indeed, we have a couple of questions. So let's start with the first one. In your opinion, how important is the school rating or reputation for my future employer?
So that question is really hard to answer without a lot of information. Absolutely anybody can email me with their questions after this presentation. But in a generic way, schools are going to be looking, or I'm sorry, employers are going to be looking for your MBA to be recognizable, right? They're going to have a well-known brand. And so, sometimes that could be regionally. So it might be better, depending on where you live, it could be better to get a degree at an IIM versus maybe coming to the US and getting a degree at Darden. It just depends on the employer, where they're located, and then who they typically employ as well. So looking at those employment statistics and being able to see, is this employer that I'm interested in recruiting at this school?
Yeah, that's great. You are talking a lot about careers opportunities. So naturally, we have a couple of questions related to this. And the first question is, what is the average duration of an MBA internship?
So the MBA internship typically lasts about 3 months. They do try, especially if it's a U.S. school, they'll try to allow you the opportunity to study abroad for a month before or after your internship, so that you can have a study abroad experience. And especially if you don't have any other international opportunities during that time, they want to give you 3 to 5 weeks to spend in another country during the study abroad period.
Yeah. And another question, a bit of a hot topic. Do you think companies are hiring less recent graduates due to the COVID crisis?
I think this is all in how you're marketing yourself, because honestly, an MBA program is a place to learn not only what's happening now, but what's happening in the future. So ideally, during your MBA program, you're going to be gaining insights into how to navigate from the people that are studying what's going on with the economy and where things are headed in the future. So you're going to gain that experience not only to lead today, but also tomorrow. I believe that's a tagline for one of the MBAs themselves, but really that's, how you should be positioning yourself when you're in your career, or I'm sorry, in your interviews. But I do think that, these top companies are still looking for MBAs with COVID and everything that's happened with the pandemic. I think that there's definitely some turnover that's happening. Some folks are retiring versus staying in the workforce and willing to go back. So I think they are looking for some fresh, new perspective, and they're open for those opportunities and ready for that.
Thank you for this rather positive answer, and it's very encouraging to hear this.
Yeah.
And finally, we have one question related to the applications themselves. How to assure that my recommender gives me a good letter of recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where it becomes really important. So when I worked at admissions, we would always encourage candidates to actually go and have a cup of coffee with their recommender and say, hey, I'd really like for you to, I'd love to take you to a cup of coffee and discuss your ability to, be my recommender for my MBA applications. And so, you're kind of giving this respectable moment to them, but then also share with them a bit more about who you are. And they need to know more than just your job, but more of your progression. So you'll share with them your resume and then some of the short-term and long-term goals that you have. That's an ideal situation. It's not always that easy to get a cup of coffee with who your recommender is, but it is important to make sure that they know who you are, understand your career progression thus far. So if it's better to have your manager give you a letter of recommendation versus a VP of your section who can really just say, yeah, they're great. I've heard good things about them, or yeah, they haven't missed a day of work. Like those aren't going to be insightful for an MBA committee. So Aringo specifically, we kind of work on, helping if it's possible. Some schools have strict rules around letters of recommendation, but even giving them a sample of, what to include in that letter of recommendation. When we work with clients, we present them with all of the questions that are going to be asked. So it's easy to position your recommender for preparing that letter itself.
Thank you. That's a great answer and very helpful. We don't have any other questions in the Q&A box right now, but for everyone who is listening right now or have registered for this webinar, we're going to send you recording as well as the contacts of Jenifer, so you can ask your questions via email or also check Aringo services. Thank you once again, Jen, for joining us today. And to everyone who is listening, I wish you a lot of luck in your academic journey. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.